Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Mr. Shart, Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Agatha All Along Episode 5, Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power. An appropriate lyric from the ballad to pull, as this is our darkest hour, or rather 25 minutes, of the series yet. But wakes the power of Wiccan, whom this episode implies is the son of the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Jessica and I released our raw reaction on Wednesday night, and then took your questions on the break room. But now, let's do it. What you're here for, our deep dive into this episode, moment by moment, to break down all of the details you missed, including some extremely subtle audio details that you might recognize if you watched WandaVision as obsessively as we did. And yes, I am wearing our exclusive Green Witch Rio shirt from nerdriot.shop, the best way to support New Rockstars and a great place for a holiday gift for that special Mr. Shart in your life. All right, we open with the title, Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power. But notice we pause for a long time on just the darkest hour part of it, perhaps to prepare viewers for the dark elements of this episode, the death of Alice Wu, the reveal that Agatha's sacrifice of her son Nicholas Scratch happened when he was a boy old enough to realize what was going on and to say the words, "Mama, stop." And we should also note that melodically, Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power is kind of a shorter transitional part of the song lyric, where all the other episode titles so far have required longer breaths to even sing. So in a way, it also kind of prepares us for a much shorter episode. But I must say, in these 25 minutes, it's still quite rich with detail. Like, I don't think there's any filler, and there's a lot to talk about. So we open on the Witch's Road looking far more morbid than usual. Whereas in past episodes, the Witch's Road seemed unaffected by any weather element. Now notice a creepy breeze blows through and rustles the leaves, which could be a clue that some door was left open to allow the Salem Seven to enter. Often in scary moments in film and TV, a flapping curtain or a suddenly flickering candle is just kind of a way to indicate someone is now in the house. And you can see the leafless patch in the shape of a body on the path. So this is the same part of the road from last episode where they conducted the invocation to summon a new Green Witch. And it's from that new hole in the dirt nearby that Rio Vidal crawled out of that the members of the Salem Seven emerged from as well. This is the door that was left open. And now we must wonder, did Rio leave that door open on purpose for the Salem Seven to follow? Did she intentionally leave that chunk of obsidian right there so that they would know how to follow the trail? You'll just have to notice that throughout this episode, Rio never seems that afraid of them when they're approaching, almost like they would be unable to kill her. The first to crawl out is the Fox. That's the member of the Salem Seven played by Athena Preample. The Fox has its mouth open, which could be the Flehmen response, where animals will sniff the air, often with their mouth open, when they're looking for prey. Then the Crow. That's Bethany Curry's member of the Seven. Then the Snake, Marina Mazeppa's character. Now the others of the team include the Rat. That's Britta Grant's character. The Coyote, Chow Nomova's character. The Owl, Alicia Vela Bailey's character. And the leader of this group, Vertigo, the Cicada, played by Okwe Okpokwastili. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. So the Salem Seven is confirmed in this episode to be the daughters of the Salemite witches whom Agatha killed in 1693, showed in the flashback in WandaVision episode 8. In the comics, Salem's Seven refer to a group of animalistic supervillains formed by their father, Nicholas Scratch, the son of Agatha Harkness, from New Salem, Colorado, in Fantastic Four number 186 in 1977. In this comic, Vertigo is really the eldest of the group and their leader, who becomes High Priestess of New Salem. And you'll notice that the Salem Seven are adorned with extended headpieces that make them look almost extraterrestrial, but really function in tandem with the actors' movements, so that when they jerk their heads, the back parts of their headpieces jerk around their whole silhouettes, and they wear these interesting lace masks. But otherwise, the dresses that they're wearing seem straight out of the 1693 Salem era. And the fact that they are just so animalistic in their movement imply that they have just been so driven by rage for the past 300 something years that they've never been able to just evolve properly. As these hands wrap around the tree trunk, we hear the Seven whisper. And then they continue to whisper. The women say, find them, because as we learned back in episode 3, a burden carried by one witch is carried by all.
Is that because Coven share blessings and burdens alike?
On the road, they find a piece of obsidian, which is what Lilia Calderu placed on the ground during the Green Witch invocation in episode 4, when she requested that the Green Witch be strong and wise and be best at her craft. Obsidian is a volcanic glass that in many cultures is believed to have healing properties. At least that's what the tour guide told me on the bus ride from Cancun to Chichen Itza. And really, I just ended up with worse back pain after lugging 10 extra pounds of rocks on the flight home. Yuck, yuck. But for Lilia, this piece of obsidian has some divination power. In the moonlight, notice it even seems to shimmer as if it is moving, like it's actively warning Lilia to wake up. Now, a goofy little detail here, while the Coven sleeps, Jen has fashioned a sleeping mask to block out the moonlight using a few wide leaves. I love her character. In episode 4, Jen said that in addition to being a midwife who was screwed over by some Boston area obstetricians, she was an 11th generation root worker. The screener I saw when I was writing that episode did not have captions, so that I couldn't really make out what the actress Sashir Zameda was saying, but thanks to It's Johnny Utah on Twitter and Lisa Teniel on YouTube for clarifying that a root worker refers to a hoodoo tradition of spiritual practices and conjuring and botanical knowledge stemming back to Central Africa, and it made its way to the Americas from the transatlantic slave trade. And Jen says 11th generation, which would mean that she would have to have traced her lineage of this tradition back to over 300 years before the United States was even founded as a country, potentially to an ancestor from Central Africa. And root working for her and her family was just a proud family pastime passed down from mother to daughter, maintained by the women of this family throughout everything that they endured in history. Lilia and Jen recall the Salem Seven's origins from Agatha's coven, and Rio defends Agatha.
Because her own mother tried to have her executed.
Are you really defending a noted serial killer, you creepy lurker?
So you'll notice Rio's attitude toward Agatha seems to shift line by line in this episode. While she seems mostly antagonistic, she also defends Agatha's actions when it comes to taking lives. Rio might defend a lot of serial killers, because last episode hinted strongly, and this episode doubles down on it, so I'm not afraid to speculate at this point, that she is actually Lady Death, or Mistress Death, the embodiment of the concept of death in Marvel Comics. Evidence includes Rio's hooded black costume, the fact that the tarot card for death in this show carries Rio's black heart in one hand and her curved dagger in the other, Rio saying that she wanted to take lives in episode 4, and Agatha begging Rio in episode 4 to spare the teen when he was fatally wounded, and then the spectral form of death appearing behind Lilia Calderou's childhood maestra in episode 3, and that form matching the statue of Mistress Death that appeared in the Chamber of Cosmic Entities in Thor: Love and Thunder, a chamber that also included the Living Tribunal, the Watcher, the Celestial One above all, Death, Eon, and Infinity, who is a sibling to Eternity, who presided over this chamber and then actually resided in the watery chamber beyond. So it would seem that Agatha's relationship with Rio is really just a romantic expression of flirting with death. Death is depicted as a romantic figure in the Marvel Comics, the object of Thanos' affection when he snapped half of all the universe out of existence in the Infinity Gauntlet storyline that inspired the Infinity War Endgame events.
To challenge them is to court death.
And of course, Death was at one point a partner to Deadpool. So you can imagine Aubrey Plaza having a lot of fun with that arc of the character in future Doomsday or Secret Wars events. And remember, towards the end of episode 4 at the campfire, Agatha walks up with the orange flower in her hand that she and Rio had exchanged throughout the episode, the one that Rio was wearing in her hair, suggesting that Agatha and Rio might have, before that moment, been doing something off screen. So while they did not end episode 4 with any kind of kiss, maybe they were just, spent. Lilia says Agatha spared the children of the Salemites. Agatha says that she should have finished what she started and that mercy is overrated, but let's sit with that for a second, because Agatha, back in 1693, set a rule when it came to killing kids. To me, that would suggest that the trial in 1693 happened after she sacrificed her son Nicholas Scratch to get the Darkhold. She spared the Salemites' daughters out of guilt after what she did to her son. And if that's true, it would mean that Evanora did put Agatha on trial for sacrificing Nicholas Scratch for the Darkhold, and that Agatha in 1693 did have the Darkhold in her possession at that point, and that she has had it for all of this time. And it was the Nicholas Scratch Darkhold trade that Agatha was referring to when she said this when she was on trial.
I did not break your rules. They simply bent to my power.
So Teen proposes a Hexenbesen, which is a German term translating to witch's broom. Why German? Well, Germans just have a lot of cool words for things that we just don't have words for in English, like Schadenfreude, happiness at the misfortune of others, or Weltanschauung, a cognitive worldview for philosophy. Yes, I chose 2 examples from songs and Broadway musicals, Schadenfreude and Avenue Q, and Weltanschauung as the winning word in 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And I do this in honor of Patti LuPone and the Lopez's, who actually did the music and lyrics for Avenue Q. When Teen suggests brooms, the witches all talk over each other. Most hate the idea, but Rio, right off the bat, says yes.
What about a Hexenbesen?
Brooms?
Horrible.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a terrible idea.
Yes.
So they rip up these exposed roots to use as broomsticks, and Lilia explains that brooms have been co-opted by the holiday industrial complex as an absurd emblem of witch culture and that they're an obvious symbol of female domesticity. Basically, she's calling out Spirit Halloween and the fact that historically, witch trials have been a form of institutionalized misogyny. Each of the witches fashion their broomsticks with different flora, some with basic twigs and vines like Jen, some with more greenery and flowers like Lilia. They circle each other and chant in Latin.
Prote, delecta, aperio, via.
According to our Twitter Latin expert, Mad Latinist, this translates to, for you, beloved, I open the way. And this account points out that delecta comes from deligo, which means to love or to esteem, which would work both for friends and for lovers. This account also points out that when Alice says it, the masculine should be prote delecte aperio viam, but it seems like Alice doesn't change the incantation for teen. And I just really love this idea that, part of witchcraft requires cooperation, strength in numbers, the power of many, you might say. And on the break room, Zach compared it to like Japanese tea sharing, that you pour tea for the person you're spending time with as a way to show that you trust each other. Agatha explains that the broomsticks must be given to each other as a sign of selflessness, and Lilia and Jen pair up. Agatha and Rio pair up, but notice they don't appear to go through the Latin chant, but that leaves Alice and Teen to pair up, which is really nice because in episode 3, they shared that moment on the couch where Teen realized that everything started happening for both of them when they were around the age of 13. But then the owl of the Salem Seven flaps up, and if you look closely, it has red eyes. It pounces on Teen, and Protection Witch Alice swings for the fences. So they mount the Hexenbesen. Rio brings up the rear, sitting on her side saddle, screaming, woo! Lilia shouts back to Teen,
Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god.
Try praying to the Divine Mother, kiddo!
Okay, so the Divine Mother could refer to a few different people. There's Gaia, aka Mother Earth in the Marvel Comics, which is derived from Gaia, the name for the Earth goddess in Wicca. But Gaia is just kind of a godly figure that has appeared in certain Doctor Strange comics that just kind of represents Earth in its kind of natural form. But another Divine Mother could be Hecate or Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft, who was the sought-after figure in Santorini in James Robinson's Scarlet Witch run in 2016 that actually introduced the concept of the Witch's Road. But who are we kidding? The Divine Mother has to be the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, right? Especially with what Agatha tells Teen at the end of the episode. And notice that right after Lilia brings up the Divine Mother, Agatha, at the top of the pack, turns around and reacts. She hears this. Obviously, Agatha has the most history out of any of these with the Scarlet Witch, except for maybe Teen, which we'll talk about later, but she hates the idea that anyone would pray to the Scarlet Witch the way Sharon seemed to have done in episode 3 when she asked to save her husband, Mr. Davis.
Wanda, I'm begging you. Let him breathe, please.
So they fly up above the Witch's Road across the blood moon, and it's just an incredible visual. Their silhouettes frame against the moon, and the music soars, and we cut to each of their gleeful reactions. It's all taken directly from Steven Spielberg's iconic shots in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which, let's not forget, is a Halloween movie, even though I watch it every summer for whatever reason. Lilia says that she hasn't done this in centuries, maybe out of her progressive aversion to the witch's broom stereotype, or that could have just been the last time she had a coven to share broomsticks with, because, we saw her Maestra, they all died like 300 years ago. Now, there is this moment where Agatha looks over at Rio uncertainly, and we hear this sound under the music. Yeah, notice there's a distinct distorted scream of a child buried in the mix there. Like maybe it's a scream of Nicholas Scratch, which could be something Agatha hears every time she looks at Rio. The road pulls them back down, and they all scream, but Rio emits this unhinged cackle, which is very Wicked Witch of the West. If she is death, it would make sense that she would be the least afraid of dying in this moment. Being served a targeted ad happens so frequently that we forget how they're able to target us. It's because whenever you go online, you're creating a data profile that's like a warped version of you. Data brokers can take that data, package it, and sell it to whoever they want. But Delete Me can help you take that data back. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that helps you reduce the risks of identity theft and scams by removing your data from hundreds of data broker sites. Delete Me works all year long to remove things like your name, address, email address, phone number, and more from data broker sites, and they're constantly adding new features and updating their removal targets to help you get back control over your personal data. It's super easy to use. You take 5 minutes to submit your info to Delete Me. Their experts comb through the internet looking for places your data shouldn't be, and then they remove it and send you a report on what they've done. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/rockstars and use promo code code Rockstars at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Rockstars and use code Rockstars. Thank you, Delete Me, for sponsoring this video. They're back on the road and they fly right at Vertigo, who hovers above the ground and spews cicadas. Now remember, it was a cicada that Wanda Maximoff found on the curtain in Agatha's house in WandaVision episode 7. A cicada that Agatha in episode 8 bewitched and fed to Senor Scratchy. There are two subspecies of cicadas, one with a 17-year life cycle, one with a 13-year life cycle, and in the past year, those two groups actually converged in many states in the Midwest to the absolute horror of our friends in Missouri. But in the case of Vertigo, I just love this idea that she's this dormant but perpetually resurrecting force of nature. Her release of the cicadas also reminds us of the way Candyman would spew bees from his mouth. Very creepy and gross. They find a literal cabin in the woods for their next trial, and like the past two trials, this setting is not one specific movie, but more of a vibe amalgamation of several different influences. Like the cabin setting, recall Sam Raimi's Evil Dead and Drew Goddard's 2012 meta deconstruction of that trope, cabin in the woods. The fact that it's an 80s time period, even something like an 80s summer camp horror vibe, recalls Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp. The 80s costumes also recall Poltergeist and Nightmare on Elm Street, and with Agatha's possession later, definitely some vibes of The Exorcist and Hereditary. We're gonna point out all the specific details referencing these films, but yeah, this is largely a Stranger Things approach to 80s horror, but with a Ouija board instead of D&D. When they first run in, we can see throughout the cabin troll dolls with Barbie doll legs sticking up, walkie-talkies, a broom leaning against the left of the door, and above the door later on we see our school pennants for Westview and Eastview. Just a reminder that in the Agnes of Eastview opening credits, there was a high school football scoreboard showing a game between Westview and Eastview. So I think we're gonna explore Eastview at some point. There's a stained glass window showing the cycles of the moon, and this trial emphasizes the blood moon. The Coven's attire has been updated to reflect that 80s horror aesthetic. They're all wearing 80s digital wristwatches like the egg timer and the metronome. This is the countdown device of this trial. This brand is G-Shock, which was a popular brand in the 80s for kids. Agatha's brooch amulet has moved to a bracelet over her wristwatch. She wears a purple sport jersey as a pajama nightshirt, like no pants, I don't think, which is similar to Diane's jersey in Poltergeist, but instead of number 65, it is number 3, white on purple, which I think is meant to represent the triple goddess, Maiden Mother Crone. Teen, meanwhile, wears a long sleeve sport tee, red sleeves with a blue headband, which are the colors of Wiccan's comic book appearance. Now remember, the Halloween costume that Billy Maximoff wore in WandaVision episode 6 used the same approach with the blue headband, and we're going to talk about the connection between those two forms of Billy later. I'll say that Teen's look also gives off Johnny Depp in The Nightmare on Elm Street, and since this is a camp cabin, kind of Kevin Bacon in Friday the 13th, and if that was the inspiration, I just love the implication that Joe Locke could become a future A-lister who really got his start as a teenager in a horror title like this. Rio Vidal wears a camp shirt that seems to be a reference to the Camp Crystal Lake counselor shirt with the red trim, but the logo on the breast pocket is just 2 green leaves, which I think is a reference to her being the Green Witch. Rio, throughout this episode, still has her curved dagger, but it's the handle to her hairbrush, which she often wields as a microphone, like teenage girls will do in a lot of these movies, but another moment she just brandishes the blade end around threateningly. Jennifer Kale wears pink pajamas. Printed on the breast pocket is an icon of her amulet, the potion bottle. Her pink pajamas remind me of Carol Ann from Poltergeist. Alice's amulet that was previously worn in her necklace now appears as a hair clip. Her teal athletic top draping over one shoulder in the iconic 80s workout style. It has some X's embroidered on it, and I don't know if this is connected, but Martin Scorsese's The Departed, characters who are doomed to die are marked with X shapes in the frame with them throughout the film. And then as we continue to look around the cabin, we see there's a tire swing with a knit blanket over it. The 80s TV set is covered in static, which is another reference to the iconic shots of Poltergeist. The sofa in the room has a plaid print design and a knit blanket draped over it, which many are pointing out looks like the couch from Roseanne. And forgive me for getting crazy here, but there are some concentric hula hoops hanging behind Jen in the background. Outside in, we go yellow, then purple, then pink, then blue, which I don't know, maybe that's like Alice, then Agatha, then Lilia, then Billy, the teen? I don't know if there's anything to that. Agatha tells them that they must continue with the trial before the Salem Seven can breach, and continues to rustle her hair looking for any clingy cicadas. Makes me think that if one cicada is on you, Vertigo could like manifest. But then notice how Teen realizes he lost his spellbook, the moleskin notebook he had attached to his hip before. So I went back through every shot of Billy on the broomstick in the first part of this episode, including their tumble back on the road, and you never see the spellbook separate from him. And honestly, it shouldn't have, because we looked at the costume designs and this is attached via a strap and a chain to his thigh. So much so that Joe Locke has described it as uncomfortably snug. So I think that Agatha snatched it from him at some point, and that's why she briskly moves on from the conversation here. On the break room, Brandon said that Teen's spellbook could become the new Darkhold of the show, but I think that's why Agatha wants it. While Agatha is almost always in front of him during the chase scene, he does pass her in the doorway right as their costumes all change. And in that transition, Agatha could have lifted the book off him without him noticing. I don't know, maybe she's hiding the book in that fluffy hair, and that's why she's wrestling it. Alice suggests suggests that they have to play Kiss, Marry, Kill, which I love because this is Disney Plus and they can't say Marry, Kill. As they search the cabin for clues for the next trial, we hear this creepy synth keyboard music. It's kind of like the score for Nightmare on Elm Street. Rio says that it's Agatha's trial, and Lilia seems to affirm that by pointing out that it's a blood moon, when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. So a blood moon happens when Earth's moon is in total lunar eclipse, which means Earth is directly between the sun and the moon, and Earth's atmosphere causes the light bending around this planet to cast a reddish hue on the moon. A total lunar eclipse, or a blood moon, happens about once every 2.5 years, and I think the next one is coming in March 2025. Lilia says that she cannot communicate with the dead.
I read people, I read time, but talking to spirits was just a con.
So we've been keeping track of all of Lilia's non sequitur outbursts throughout the season, and this episode might be the one that finally connects the dots. Captain Cupcakes on Twitter via Air Chronicles on TikTok realized that in episode 4, Lilia says, Alice don't, and back in episode 3, Lilia says, try to save Agatha. And when you go back in time and put those together, you get this.
Alice, don't try to save Agatha.
Alice, don't try to save Agatha. It's a message of warning to Protector Blood Witch Alice to not try to save Agatha, because as we'll see in this episode, using her power that way will allow Agatha to steal Alice's power and kill her. Rio says,
and who better to commune with the dead than someone who's put so many in the grave?
Now Rio seems impressed by Agatha's body count, but if she's deaf, she would have put billions of humans on this planet in the grave. So a Ouija board flies out from the stack from under Challenge the Zodiac and Pente, and above Clue in Sweet Valley High. I love that it's clearly a practical effect caused by like a spring or an air jet. In close-ups of the board, we see that it's a vintage version from William Fold, who is this original game's developer, and it says Parker Brothers, Salem, Massachusetts. And I think it's an interesting detail. It is where the company was located in real life. Behind Teen is a poster for Point Reyes, a location in John Carpenter's horror film The Fog. And based on this poster and the other poster that we see in this cabin, a Redwood National Park poster, I think this cabin is supposed to be set like in California. Teen opens up the Ouija board and reads the directions, and notice that in this trial and both of the previous ones, it is always Teen who finds the clues for whatever the trial is. It could be that he's the youngest and most eager to make this trip down the road, or there could be something more to it. I just wanted to point it out. Lilia notices the back of the directions, and Teen says it's for ages 3 and up, and this has to be important, right? Like, I don't know if it was when this vintage board was made, but Ouija boards are commonly known for being ages 8 and up. You don't want a 4-year-old talking to spirits. So I think the age being 3 and up is not only another example of the power 3 made in Mother Crone, but I think it's also a reference to the age Nicholas Scratch was when he died. Episode 3 made it seem like he was a baby, but this episode reveals his voice crying, "Mama, stop," and it sounds like it's a boy around the age of 3.
Mama, stop!
They all place their hands on the planchette and it glides over the letters.
MRSHART.
Yep, on the reaction, like many of you, I read this as Mr. Shart. And I hate to bring this up when it comes to Sharon Davis, but you know, when someone dies, one of the first things the body does is release the bowels. But you know, I don't think that would technically be a shart, because a shart, by definition, is flatulence you think is dry gas, but then surprises you with something more. And that's not what a corpse is doing. A corpse isn't like trying to fart and going, oh no. But if Mr. Hart, aka Mr. Davis, died from a heart attack, a shart might have been the first warning sign of that heart attack. I'm sorry for spending so much time on this. Let's move on. But we should have known from this moment that only Agatha would call Sharon Davis Mrs. Hart. And so this is obviously a very, very funny prank by Agatha. And Catherine Hahn does a solid Deborah Jo Rupp.
Bringing chills and thrills and bringing on my own early demise.
And right away, we see how Agatha is breaking the rule by taunting the dead. The next word the planchette spells is
D-E-A-T-H. Death.
That laugh is another clue that Rio must be Mistress Death, and it might be her moving the planchette at this point. It spells out what Death wants: punish Agatha. And it looks like Aubrey Plaza's arms are tensing the most to actually move the planchette, and in this wide shot as the lights flicker, you can see her smiling while the rest are panicked. And notice that Death doesn't want to kill Agatha, she just wants to punish Agatha and torture Agatha. Then the planchette spins by itself, and the board flies off the table as the room fills with disembodied shrieks. And again, keep your eye on Rio for all this. She's always completely enjoying the moment. Over the screaming, Lilia shouts,
I hated this the first time!
Lilia's being weird again!
I'm assuming this is a callback to episode 2 when Agatha and Teen were first meeting Lilia in her kitchen and she turned and screamed and covered her ears in a similar way. That moment was her flashing forward to this moment. And when Jen turns on Agatha to punish her for her crimes, Rio again can be seen in the background reveling in the Coven, turning on Agatha to humiliate her. She does this weird kind of like, uh-oh, what's she gonna do? Teen tries to defend Agatha, but
Familiars don't get a vote.
ooh, the ice that Teen gives Jen when she calls him a familiar is similar to when Agatha letter says, "Come, pet," and that seems to be the final straw that elicits the reaction we get from him. He does not like being called an animal. The lights go out, and Agatha has disappeared, and something drips on Teen's shoulder, probably Agatha's spit, and he looks up to see, Agatha, possessed, crouched against the ceiling. We've seen this kind of imagery in Hereditary when Toni Collette was kind of crouched against the ceiling, you know, like, and the face makeup is obviously a nod to The Exorcist, along with a contortion and the spider walk and this distorted deep voice. Lilia flips on the lights and Agatha disappears again, and there's an insert of this robot toy marching around, which is also a reference to a shot in Poltergeist when some supernatural shit's happening. Next, they see a white glowing vapor floating down the stairs, which looks a lot like the iconic ILM visual effects from the 80s, the ghost in Poltergeist when it comes down the stairs, and what first appears inside the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, a white wispy vapor that turns into a horrifying woman. This vapor takes the form of Evanora Harkness, Agatha's mother. Kate Forbes returning from WandaVision episode 8. Rio says,
I hate ghosts.
another Mistress Death clue, I think, because Death would hate ghosts because these souls refuse to let go and to move on into the afterlife. Evanora says that her unfinished business requires them to finish the Witch's Road without Agatha, to punish her in that way, and to leave Agatha with her mother. But Rio says,
No! No way! A minute ago you were ready to slit her throat.
Yeah, well, her mother can't have her.
notice how Evanora sneers at Rio, and there's a particular antagonism between the two, which becomes even more interesting when Evanora says this.
You were born evil. I ought to have killed you the moment you left my body.
Yikes, even all the other people in the room just take a moment to see how mean that is to say. So here's what I think happened, and I go more into this in the upcoming episode of the Sneak Peek on Sunday, but I think Evanora and her daughter Agatha were part of the Salemite Coven in 1693 Massachusetts, and they established a pretty well-organized matriarchal society that had their own way of handling their problems. But Agatha, as like a younger girl, wanted the Darkhold for herself, maybe to revolutionize society so that witches don't have to live in the shadows, but could like seek vengeance against the men who exiled and tortured them. And to do so, she would need the Darkhold to become, she thinks, what's prophesied in the Darkhold, the Scarlet Witch, and learn magic above her station. So she makes a deal to get the Darkhold in exchange for her son, Nicholas Scratch. But she can't bring herself to do it, so she turns to Mistress Death to do it for her. This could be why the Salemites called Agatha a freak of nature, mors monstro naturae. Mistress Death could resent Agatha's mother Evanora for punishing her daughter just for having this rebellious relationship with Death, and perhaps it was Death who gave Agatha the power to absorb witches' powers when they try to blast her. That's at least my theory after this week. But Jen realizes there's no flood or fire here.
The only danger to us in this trial is Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, she's not wrong. On the break room, we speculated that this might not even be Agatha's trial at the end of the day, but really a trial that ultimately serves her familiar, Teen, who truly is the one who communes and connects with the ghost, Nicholas Scratch, and walks away with new abilities. When the witches try to leave, Agatha shouts,
I can be good, please.
This is what Agatha pleaded to the Salemites when she was on trial in 1693.
Please, I can be good.
No, you cannot.
And Alice steps in to save Agatha, blasting Evanora's ghost out of her, and Lilia says,
Knight of Wands.
So the Knight of Wands is one of the tarot cards we've not yet discussed. It represents decisive action and determination, often associated with fire. But we'll see if Lilia shouting this will have any additional context in a future episode, because trailer footage in that castle location where they're all wearing Wizard of Oz cosplay with the swords that fall down on that table that they're facing are tarot cards. And I think her trial is going to revolve around tarot card reading. But after Evanora exits her body, Agatha cannot help herself and reaches forward. This is not an accident. She chooses to do this to actively change the sorcery from orange to purple, just as she did with the Salemites, and drains poor Alice's life force. But Teen notices the Ouija board planchette shifting around and asks, "Who are you?" And the answer is this.
N-I-C-H-O-L-A-S-S-C-R-A-T-C-H. Nicholas Scratch!
Yes, a bit of Joe Locke's English accent crept in there, but some big takeaways here. The fact that Agatha could hear him say Nicholas Scratch tells her that Nicholas Scratch was not the name Teen was saying under the sigil. That's how she knows that he's not Nicholas Scratch, so he must be Wanda's son. And then there is something that happens after, and this got me emotional when I watched it.
Mama, stop!
Whoa. So I know you might be able to interpret this moment as maybe the ghost of Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, possibly sneaking into Agatha's body after Evanora leaves, and that it was maybe Nicholas Scratch draining Alice, not Agatha doing it. But I don't think that's what happened there. I think she was just hearing her son, hearing the ghost of young Nicholas, watching this happen and frantically trying to reach out to Teen through the board to try to get his mother to stop hurting people. And just his name would be enough to get Agatha to come to her senses. But the fact that the voice comes through as words, "Mama, stop," tells us that Nicholas was not a baby when Agatha sacrificed him, but a boy ages 3 or older, one capable of understanding on some level what his mother was doing to him. And that is pretty heartbreaking. And the way this boy's voice echoes from beyond recalls the way Wanda heard Billy and Tommy's voices calling to her in the WandaVision post-credit scene. So Teen sobs over Alice's corpse. This was the witch she bonded with the most on the road, and the witch who actually overcame generational trauma from her mother, something Agatha fails to do with her mother, Evanora. Agatha tries to explain. Sounds like she was gonna try to say, "I didn't mean to." We talked about this on the break room, but I feel like Agatha doing this when she gets blasted at this point is a reflex from a decision in the past to gain this ability long ago. Being bad is just such muscle memory that she cannot really be good. She later says,
I couldn't control it.
Yes, you could have.
and it's just kind of an interesting question. If you can't control an entire lifetime of being this way, but you kind of feel guilt about it, is that alone enough to make you a good person? So a hatch opens to exit this cabin, and Rio watches Agatha go curiously. But then Rio looks down at Alice, and this is the last time we see Rio in this episode. She doesn't follow them back up to the road. I think as Mistress Death, she might have stayed behind to ferry Alice's soul into the afterlife. Outside on the road, it now glows yellow. The road, the roots, even the sky have kind of an olive green color, and Agatha ignites some of Rio's orange sorcery in her palm, but snuffs it out. Lilia says,
Death comes for us all.
and Agatha's reaction to this line suggests that she's wondering where exactly Death, aka Rio, is in this moment. Billy says that killing people to serve one's own agenda is not for him, and now, in an episode that is clipped along at an insane pace, we slow down and we turn the camera from Teen to Agatha as she leans in and whispers in the creepiest voice. I don't know how we could interpret this as any other way than Agatha just owning her role as the villain of this series, and Teen stepping forward as the hero opposing her. I think even the camera movement and the fact that this is coming at the end of episode 5, the midpoint of this run, makes this a literal turning point, reestablishing the new trajectory of the series. But also, I think this is meant to show Teen's perspective as he sees Agatha as a true monster. It's kind of meant to justify his coming Knight of Wands action, kind of like the shot of Scott Farkas in A Christmas Story as he was just taunting Ralphie, going, "Why are you gonna cry now, baby? Come on, cry for me, wah." And then Agatha says it.
You're so much like your mother.
At this point, Agatha must be referring to Wanda Maximoff. Even if we learn that Teen is Billy Kaplan and he's born to Rebecca Kaplan with no genealogical connection to Wanda Maximoff, Agatha sees in him a connection to the Scarlet Witch. So Billy Kaplan, Wiccan's origins in Marvel Comics are pretty complicated. Wiccan was introduced as Billy Kaplan in the Young Avengers comics, the son of Rebecca Kaplan and Jeff Kaplan, but he was established to be really kind of like a reincarnated soul of one of Wanda's children from the events of House of M, the reality warps. Before that, in the 80s, the twins in the West Coast Avengers comics, who were later revealed to be fragments of Mephisto's soul. Wiccan really is just understood to share that cosmic link with Wanda Maximoff, and that's why he has the powers of witchcraft. He is kind of, in a sense, her son, but involves like, Mephisto, the multiverse, Reed Richards getting in there and splitting up Mephisto's soul. It's just kind of a mess. So I think the MCU is now trying to simplify that backstory by establishing that Billy could just be some piece of Wanda's soul when she was crushed at the end of Multiverse of Madness, and that piece of her soul respawned in the body of the closest thing to her son Billy that existed in the 616 universe, Billy Kaplan of Eastview, either when he was like still a fetus or an infant, or maybe when, as a young teenager around the age of 13, he nearly died in that near death that's reported in the headline under Joe Locke's name in the credits. Now, how would this connect to the sigil? Well, Jack Schaefer said that the sigil's design was meant to look handwritten and rushed and amateur even. Sans serif was the term she used, and I think Wanda might have placed this sigil on the boy to keep him safe from Agatha. I think we have to now let go of the theory that Nicholas Scratch Scratch could be in the body of Teen. I think Nicholas Scratch is a whole separate entity from Billy Kaplan, but Billy Kaplan might just remind Agatha of Nicholas Scratch, but then Rio ended that when she told Agatha that boy is not yours. And now perhaps Teen shouting Nicholas Scratch kind of broke the sigil so that Agatha is now able to see him as he is with his cosmic link to her old foe, the Scarlet Witch, his divine mother. And if there's any doubt that Agatha is referring to Wanda Maximoff in this moment, listen to the music as she flicks her 2 fingers off his chin. Oh my God, this is the theme of Christoph Beck's WandaVision closing credits music that played at the end of every episode. Just being creeped out at the end of every episode of WandaVision made this seared into my memory. And by using the WandaVision theme music, they want us to see Teen as the Scarlet Witch's heir, someone empowered with Wanda's spirit, the op to Agatha. Teen's fingers ignite with blue sorcery, the same kind of gestures that Wanda Maximoff would do when she was getting real serious and facing Agatha. Lilia and Jen grab Agatha and their eyes glow blue because he is controlling their bodies. 2 powerful witches, that's impressive. They throw Agatha in the mud and she sinks in, releasing one final air bubble, and then Teen throws Jen and Lilia in the mud too, and they sink. Now, why does Teen use Jen and Lilia to throw Agatha? Well, think about it. He knows if he uses his magic on Agatha directly, Agatha will be able to absorb it. Now, I do not think that Teen knew that he had these abilities the entire time, or that he's been like deceptively hiding these from the others. I don't think we've been seeing that many layers in Joe Locke's performance. I think he's been pretty authentic. I think this was part of himself that was hidden to himself, and not until his successful completion of the trial, connecting with Nicholas Scratch, and most importantly, Agatha confirming to him that the Scarlet Witch is his divine mother, was he able to activate these powers. We end the episode with Teen now wearing a blue crown. It has 2 points on the brow, which are quite similar to the shape of the crown of the Scarlet Witch. Costume designer Daniel Salon posted on Instagram this description of it. This crown was a result of a beautiful and exciting collaboration between prop master Russell Bobbitt and my team. We pulled inspiration from the concentric lines in Damascus steel and also ripples in the surface of water. With a beautiful blue chrome ombre paint treatment, we finally arrived at this powerful crown. You'll just have to wait and see what else is revealed as his full identity is revealed in future episodes. Damascus steel, a process of combining 2 alloys into one metal object like a dagger, like Rio's dagger, and ripples of water, recalling Jen's trial based on water. Together, we kind of have the 2 biggest threats to Agatha that she has seen this season. So this is not spoken aloud, but this is a pretty unambiguous coronation of Teen as Wiccan, the Marvel hero, member of the Young Avengers, who is of course depicted in Marvel Comics as having a blue crown. We should also note that in the tarot cards for the series, the Tower is depicted with a blue crown at the top as lightning strikes the top of it, causing a fire, and multiple black-clothed witches falling to their deaths. Could this be a clue that Teen will brutally kill the Salem Seven? Over this final shot, we hear Billie Eilish's "You Should See Me in a Crown." You should see me in a crown. Using Billy to introduce Billy. We see what you did there. This song has been featured in a lot of shows, like in Marvel's Runaways, Only Murders in the Building, in Euphoria, but you know, you have to use it here. It's so perfect. So we have to ask, by submerging Lilia and Jen in the mud, does that mean Teen is taking an evil, selfish turn here? On Break Room, Jessica theorized that he's just kind of moving everyone to the next part of the witch's road, and that maybe that road just leads through the mud. Trailer footage does show Agatha looking muddy in some of these shots, so she is gonna crawl her way out of that mud at some point. But we should remember that Wanda Maximoff also had a habit of controlling people and just flinging their bodies out of sight when she just couldn't deal with them anymore. I think the only way to go from here is a flashback episode that catches us up on Billy, his research of Agatha that led to this point, what exactly is written in Billy's spellbook, what his background was in Eastview, his boyf, Eddie, and this teen's actual connection to Wanda Maximoff, and everything that was happening in Westview and Eastview on the outside of Wanda's hex that Agatha was left in. I think we're finally gonna see what happened when the Darkhold Temple fell on Wanda and what the hell that flash of red light really meant. And a reminder to get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/rockstars and use promo code rockstars at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/rockstars and use code rockstars. Thank you, Delete Me, for sponsoring this video. A huge thanks to Gina Ippolito, Brandon Barrick, and Noah Chen for their valuable research help on this breakdown. Comment down below with your thoughts. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.